Appreciate you guys joining in. Israel continues to strike Lebanon. Iran said they will be responding. Will this stop the negotiations from going forward in Switzerland? This is one of the questions we'll be asking. JD Vance has been on a tour all day today, essentially telling people the reason why this is a good deal. Trump came out with some shocking statements about Israel today. We're going to be speaking about those as well. We've got Jim Kavanagh on the show again. Jim, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Appreciate you coming on. Jim, what's your thoughts? I've not spoken to you in, I believe, a couple of weeks. What's your thoughts about these negotiations?
Well, I'm going to tell your audience that at the end of your previous session with Larry Johnson, you said, "I've got Jim Kavanagh coming on, and I bet he's going to say this is going to fail because Israel's going to attack Lebanon." And you are a prophet.
They call me Nostradamus.
No, yeah. Look, this is so crazy. You've got this fundamental again. The Americans are trying to make this about something else, to pretend that it's about something else but Zionism. This is the point. This war ends when Zionism ends. When Zionism is put in a cage. Until then, it's not going to end. Israel, I did see, I think you confirmed what I thought I saw today, that Israel did attack Lebanon today. I had not heard that Iran had said specifically they were going to respond to that, but Iran has said a number of times over the past few days, if the Americans don't have the will or the ability to constrain their pet, Israel, then this isn't going to work. And we're going to respond. So Israel is going to continue this week. It's Tuesday. It's supposed to sign it on Friday. Apparently there was already an e-signing or something yesterday. But between Tuesday and Friday, Israel is going to attack Lebanon a number of times. Mm-hmm. And what is Iran going to do? Are they going to sit back and wait, or wait till after the signing on Friday, and then we'll say or is Iran going to? This is very, very difficult. And what we heard was the reasons, the reason this MOA was agreed to was because the Americans knew that Iran was going to make a big attack on Israel in response to what they did in Daya. Excuse me. So they said to Iran, all right, we'll give in on these points. Let's have So Americans, in order to get Iran to agree to another 60-day ceasefire, gave in on a number of points. But Israel's they haven't stopped and are not going to stop. The Americans are not going to stop Israel. Well, they might for the next 4 days, but not beyond that. I doubt even for the next 4 days. They're not going to stop Israel from attacking Lebanon. And the Americans don't care about that. Trump certainly doesn't care about it. Trump thinks he can make some deal to get the Strait of Hormuz open. It's about the Strait of Hormuz. It's about the nuclear issue. Guess what? Israel knows what it's about. Israel knows what it started this war about and what it's fighting about. It's fighting about the Zionist project. It's fighting about destroying the major country that actually can resist Israeli military domination of the region. And it's not going to stop doing that. So Donald Trump, the American political regime, the President of the United States and the Congress of the United States and the national security apparatus of the United States and the Pentagon and the military apparatus of the United States have the ability to stop Israel from doing that. They can say, you will not get a bullet. You will not get another rifle. You will not get another missile. You will not get another rocket. You will not get another dollar. You will not get another vote in the UN. Stop. But they will not do it. They don't have the will and they don't have the political capability of doing it politically. It's not just one person. There's a whole apparatus that is completely dedicated to Zionism and to never allowing Israel to lose a war. That is what they are deeply, deeply, existentially committed to as Zionist Americans. We cannot allow Israel to lose a war. Be driven out of Lebanon by Hezbollah, which means Hezbollah and Iran. We can't allow that to happen. To be an inferior not just an inferior, but not to be the qualitatively superior military power in the Middle East. There's a law. The United States has a law that it must provide Israel with qualitative military superiority. So we're in a very difficult situation. Donald Trump doesn't understand half of it, or a third of it, or a tenth of it. And everybody wants to figure out, they want to make it something else. They want to make it about the Strait of Hormuz and the nuclear program. That's all they got left. Is they can't make it about anything else. But it's not what it's about. This is about Zionism. It's about whether Zionism is going to be put in a box or not. And if Iran is treated as a normal country with no sanctions, with reparations, and no threat of further attack, Iran is going to become the dominant military and economic power in the Middle East. So Israel cannot abide that, because and if Israel is not allowed to take over Lebanon, southern Lebanon, so we're going to see. I mean, we'll have to see. But Iran, there's a theoretical possibility that Iran could be satisfied with getting what it wants as a nation from, reparations and assurance of no attack, and not really follow up on its pledge to support Lebanon and support. But I've not seen that happening yet, and I think Israel doesn't want this deal to go through, and is capable of stopping it. Because if Israel makes an attack and Israel comes under threat, Israel is going to put itself in a position where it needs American weapons and American support. And the political regime of the United States at this point will still do it. The popular tide of opinion is going against Israel in the United States. And that's why Israel needs to do this quickly. But the political regime is still 99.9% absolutely committed to Zionism. Donald Trump isn't, in his own mind, some bizarre way, Donald Trump is not as ideologically committed to Zionism as is Chuck Schumer or Lindsey Graham or the 90% of the Congress. But the 90% of the Congress and the military intelligence apparatus is.
But
Hope I'm wrong.
Just on that, though, if they were to do something like that, that would be ultimate betrayal, right? If they were not to help the Lebanese resistance and to abandon them, this would be the ultimate betrayal. And Jim, this is the first time we're speaking, but one thing I've been speaking about over the last 5 or 6 days is that I do feel like Iran's entrapping itself. And what I mean by that is they've clearly stated that Lebanon's going to be part of it. And what they've done is essentially laid their card out. Look, you can't hit Lebanon. They've signed the electronic agreement. And Israel initially on day one said, we're not going to be leaving. Netanyahu came out with a speech. And since then, they've slowly creeped up their attacks, increasing the volume and the number. There was the statement from Hatem al-Nabii, the Iranian IRGC today, saying that Israel conducted 84 strikes in the last 48 hours. And my position has been, which seems to be now coming true, is Israel will continue increasing the amount of attacks they're doing, but it's never great enough. Unless Iran didn't respond immediately, they would continue doing this, and it wouldn't be great enough where Iran would say, wow, you've done something huge, we're going to respond. And so you're able to escalate the levels of attack with no response. And so my concern is that now Iran's trapped itself. Because they've not responded, they're not going to be able to respond unless there's something big. And that basically ends up being they betray Lebanon. And by betraying Lebanon, or if it even seems like they're betraying Lebanon, the people will turn against them. And I predicted this about 4 or 5 days ago. And if you're on social media, and obviously I am quite connected on there, you see that the array of people are starting to turn on Iran right now. And as per what you mentioned, some are saying that this is for internal nationalistic interests. And if that's the case, then really many are saying, well, you should have let the world know that, because the resistance in Lebanon, for example, jumped in to help you because they thought it was a global issue. What's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, no, that's a one can't rule that out. That's a real risk. As I say, the Israelis will, in the end, if they feel they're not threatened by Iran, if they feel like Iran is not going to stop them from taking over Lebanon, we'll get some fighting tit for tat with Hezbollah, At the end of the day, we're going to take over Lebanon like we took over Gaza. Like we took over Gaza, and like we took over Syria. And nobody's going to stop us. Again, Iran is going to have to decide what the war is about. Again, is this about, they are saying and have always said, this is about Palestine, this is about this is about Zionism, and we have to put an end to the Zionist Greater Israel Project, and we have to put Israel back in a box, at least. But is it about that, or is it about Iranian national interest? Our country is safe. We can trade. We have no more sanctions. We get our money back. Our money back. We control the Strait of Hormuz and get some money from that. And we'll provide some weapons to Hezbollah so that they can keep fighting, but never win. And that's exactly, you're right. I mean, that's a possible outcome. I've said it in my article about this when this whole thing started. I said, look, we can't exclude the possibility that Iran will say, we're not going to go to major war with Israel and the United States as long as if we can be safe and normal. But I don't think Israel is going to accept that. This is the problem. Iran it's possible, but Israel is fanatical, and they're going to push this as far as they can, because again, they see that if Iran becomes a normal state and doesn't try to drive Israel out of Lebanon, or drive Israel out of Gaza, or drive Israel out of Syria, and it's going to really allow Israel to exist. It's not going to become an Abraham Accord state and have diplomatic relations, but it's going to let it be. It's not going to try to stop Zionism. Then Israel may put up with that, but they're not going to trust that. They want Iran out of the way. I mean, Iran would have to really betray, in the sense of giving them enough arms to survive and never to overcome. And they never do anything about Gaza, which is the real, already that's a horrible thing. And Iran has not said a word about Gaza. I mean, that hasn't been part of it's said things about it, but I mean, that hasn't been part of the negotiation game. It hasn't been part of the demands. And they're saying, we'll get to that later. So, countries have national interests, and Iran is not. One has to be wary of that happening. I'm not. Again, we're going to have to see. As I say, if Iran does nothing over the next 4 days, and Israel every day attacks another village in Lebanon, that's going to look pretty bad, and we're going to have to see.
So, one of the things that you just mentioned is about Gaza. What's your thoughts on that? Because again, I am seeing some discontent about Gaza, about the fact that Gaza hasn't been explicitly mentioned. Do you think that Iran even has the ability or capability to get them into the deal?
Well, look, again, Iran, give Iran credit. Iran is the only country that stood up, really. And they stood up to the United States and Israel, and they backed them down. And they have capabilities with Hezbollah. They have a long-standing relationship with Hezbollah, and they have an affinity and an alliance with Hezbollah that they didn't have with Hamas. Hamas greeted the Jolani regime in Syria. The Sunni element of the Muslim Brotherhood, Hamas, is a different faction, a different whole universe than the Shiite Hezbollah Iran axis. So, there's a long-standing affinity and alliance between Hezbollah and Iran that didn't exist with Hamas in Gaza. But from my point of view, from the point of view of everybody who's interested in the Palestinian cause, that Gaza is a horror show. I mean, somebody should do something about Gaza. And we're looking at Iran saying, Iran is doing something, they should do something about Gaza. They should fold that into their demands. It's just, countries have to make calculations. I want them to do it. I can't berate them for not doing it. I'm disappointed that they don't, and again, all of this says really what's necessary is a full-on war against Israel. because that's what's going to solve the problem in Gaza. That's what's going to solve the problem in Lebanon, in Syria, etc. Israel has to be identified and attacked as strongly as possible as an enemy of humanity, an enemy of the people of the Middle East, certainly, and an enemy of humanity. But I can't sit here and tell Iran they have to do that. They have to be the only ones who do that. There are Arab countries all over Iran has to, had those countries aimed at it too. So, let's find some way of doing it. Where's Russia and China? Everybody in the world has a responsibility for Gaza, not just Iran. Where's Russia and China? Send the Yemenis troops and send an international brigade into Gaza. Let's do it. Let's have someone organize it. Not just a flotilla of pacifists, but an armed international brigade. I said this from the beginning. The only thing you can do with Gaza is send a flotilla of aid ships armed with armed convoy, with an armed escort from whoever you can, say, we're bringing this aid into Gaza. You could have done that for 2.5 years. That's not just Iran's responsibility. That's the world's responsibility. We're not coming here to attack Israel. We're coming here to bring aid into Gaza and make sure it gets there, and we're going to do it. If the United States doesn't do it, if the UN doesn't do it, if Israel, you're going to have to fight us to prevent us from getting aid into Gaza. That could have been done for 2.5 years. And it wasn't, Iran couldn't have done it by itself. It would have needed Russia or China to be involved, or Turkey or India, nations that the United States and Israel just couldn't just blazingly attack and identify as terrorists or something. So this is a world problem. This is not an Iran problem. Iran is doing what it can. It may not do what I want. It may end up, quote unquote, betraying Lebanon, which would be a very negative thing. But so far it hasn't, and can it? It cannot win the war against Zionism all by itself. But it's been the only one that's been fighting it in any level. So that's my position on that.
No, that's fair enough. I think I'm kind of in agreement in some aspects. Like in terms of Gaza, obviously our heart goes out to what's happening in Gaza, but I do think it's more of a complex issue. I did mention this previously to my other guests, that you basically have a scenario where Gaza's already got its own peace deal. It's got its own peace deal through the GCC, through these fake Arab countries, and
a UN deal.
He has a UN-backed deal, which is the Gaza border peace. Now, I'm a major critic of the Gaza border peace. I said that the resistance shouldn't have signed it, although I understand the pressures they were going through because it was mass starvation and there was an extreme need for medical supplies. But that, on the other hand, they have got their own deal, and Iran can't supersede that deal. And the reason I'm saying that is if you look at the actions of the resistance in Gaza. So if you look at during this war, there's a reason why Hamas did not join this war and create a new front. And the reason is quite simple. It's because they've got their own deal and they're fulfilling their own deal. Unfortunately, the Israelis aren't. The Israelis continue to steal land. Personally, I think what should have happened was the resistance in Gaza maybe should have opened up a new front while this war was happening and really trapped Israel in. But maybe they didn't have the ability, or I am hearing that they are building up. But the point is, more than likely, they just want to continue fulfilling their deal with the hope that they may, in the end, through the Gaza border peace, get their state, which I don't think will happen. But this is maybe the hope they've got. So why I'm saying that whole story is if you've got Hamas who are saying, we've got this deal with the Gaza border peace, this is the track we're going to go down. Iran can't be like, listen, we don't care what you got to say. We're going to override it. We're going to do our own deal. You got to listen to us. They can't do that. So there is major complexities in there where they can't just simply override in the West Bank. It's the PA as well. So I think things are extremely complex. If the resistance in Gaza said, look, we don't want that deal. We now renege on the, we're not renege. We say Israel reneged on the Gaza border peace. They've now taken 20% more land. We're now going to tear it up. But they've decided not to. And because they've decided not to, you can't override their deal. That's kind of my thoughts on it.
Yeah, Iran can't easily just come in and replace Hamas as the leader of the Palestinian resistance in Gaza. So I'm saying they have a very strong relationship with Hezbollah. Hezbollah could turn around and say Iran is betraying us if they feel like Iran is betraying them. You know what I mean? That's not what they feel. People are making strategic and tactical decisions in a very difficult situation. What Iran has done supremely well, they've used the advantages they have to back off and back down and force the Americans to back off. But they're still, the United States has a more massive military than Iran. Iran can get the crap bombed out of it by the United States and Israel. And I still am not, I think it's more than a 50-50 chance that Iran will eventually get nuclear weapon nuked by Israel because they have no other choice. So it's not, Iran can't run this show all by themselves. And all these people who voted for this Board of Peace, this UN approved, ridiculous. Russia and China voting for that at the UN. I mean, but they said we did it because the Palestinians wanted us to, because the PA wanted us to, and Hamas. Did Hamas really push for this or say please vote for this? I mean, so again, this is the difficulty that we've been in for 70 years. Everybody's afraid of the hell that's going to come to them if they don't make some kind of concession and accept some kind of compromise. Iran has been the only power so far that really has not been afraid of that. They said, no, we're gonna fight, and we'll fight you. And at some point, there are still, I know very well, there are people in Iran who say, well, we don't really want to get into a big war with America and Iran, and we got to take it. So this is part of what's happening. We are fortunate enough not to be have to worry about that coming down on our heads, but we are, experienced enough and feel enough solidarity with the Palestinian people that we'd like to see more happen. So we say what we want, and we be skeptical and critical as we want, but give Iran credit. It's the only country that stood up for itself and for another country, and it's fought back. And this is now, I hope people around the world and in the Palestinian resistance movement say, maybe we don't have to be as afraid of the fight. Maybe there's a way of mounting a fight, a real big fight. Yeah. We're not the ones who are trying to back off from the real big fight. They're the ones. Watch, look, Israel and the United States is backing off from a big fight. And, and it is true that Israel can't do this without the backing of the United States. And it is true that the only reason the United States is there because they're backing Israel. Israel goes away, the United States has nothing left there to fight for. But it's a very difficult situation. So I know what's going on. I mean, the debate about whether Iran's given up too much or compromised too much, and there's a serious debate within Iran, and we're going to see, because look, have they yet published officially the text of the MOU?
Well, we have the 3 different versions. We have the Mer News version. We have the Axios version. And then about an hour ago, Bloomberg released their version. So we've got like 3 different versions.
Yeah, but there's no single specific version that's, we know this is what Iran and the United States. So, and everybody, including Iran, is being cagey about that. But look, unless it's completely off base, what we probably know about this agreement is that it gives Iran an enormous number of concessions that it would never. I mean, it's just a failure and a surrender by the United States on a lot of levels, and so Iran can't just throw that away. And Iran is still saying, I mean, I've seen again today that Israel's attacking Lebanon. We're going to respond to that. Okay, let's see what they do. And if that response from Iran to Israel was what was preventing the MOU, then it's going to blow it up before Friday. I mean, so I don't know. I know Trump really wants to make this about Strait of Hormuz and nuclear weapons. And nuclear weapons they're not even talking about. It's not really what he wants is the Strait of Hormuz. He wants the markets calm. He wants the economic situation to calm down so that we don't have depression in Europe, the United States and Western Europe. And I don't think he can avoid it. I mean, even if he gets this agreement, it's not. And it's only, look, all we're looking at right now is a memorandum of understanding for another 60-day ceasefire. Mm-hmm. It's not a final agreement about anything. It's an agreement about a ceasefire. And
But it does, but Jim, it does
the
seem
wild card is Israel, and they're going to blow it up.
well, yeah, for sure. But what's because you mentioned it's 60 days, but the most important, I would say, contentious thing is included in the 60 days, which is Lebanon, right? Because for me, the nuclear seems like it could, and I always said this. I said the nuclear, there could always be a deal. The only reason there was war in the first place was because of Israel. And if you look at the nuclear, it's not that far away from getting a deal. And what I mean by that is Trump came out today and he essentially said that, was it today or yesterday? Anyway, he made a statement saying that he was fine with Iran enriching nuclear enriched uranium for civilian use. So that's already a major concession. He's talked about how he's open to Iran diluting the highly enriched uranium, the 60%, down in Iran. So that's another concession. So where would the disagreement be? It may be what allowing them to have nuclear facilities. They're gonna, if he's allowing them to enrich, he's gonna allow them to have nuclear facilities. So how could there be a disagreement on the enriched uranium?
Yeah, it's not about this. It's not about that. There was a very good agreement that prevented Iran from having a nuclear weapon, and they blew it up. And Trump blew it up because he wanted to be the guy and he wanted to take down Obama's agreement and say it's terrible, and because he was listening to all the Zionists around him and, who didn't want it. I mean, Chuck Schumer didn't want it. He didn't want JCPOA. So he blew it up on behalf of the Zionists. Mm-hmm. And he thought it doesn't make any difference because we're the tough guys and Iran can't really do anything about it. The Americans were living on their American exceptionalism and superiority and assumption that nobody could smack them back, and that he's facing the fact that that's not working and it doesn't work anymore. So he doesn't know what the hell to do about it. But, it was never about non-existent Iranian nuclear weapons. It was about the extant nuclear military capability of the United States, the very good precision missiles that they had. Back, 6-7 years ago, they were striking Ansar was striking Saudi Arabian oil facilities dead on, bullseye. And everybody knew the Iranian and the Israelis wanted to get rid of the ballistic missile facilities. That's what they wanted. The two things they wanted from Iran was getting rid of their ballistic military capabilities and ending Iran's support for the Palestinian resistance groups in the region, their quote-unquote Iranian proxies. So that's what they really wanted. That's what it was always about. It wasn't about nuclear weapons. That was for the American liberal public. And those things are now not even being talked about anymore because they know they can't get them. They can't get them from Iran. How are you going to get Iran to give up its nuclear weapons? I mean, it's ballistic missiles. They're not going to look at their missile and their whole range of missile capabilities, hypersonic missiles and drone warfare. Now, Iran's not going to give it up. Why should they? Unless you overthrow the government of Iran. That's all. And Israel knows this. That's why Israel isn't going to stop. Because Israel, that's what Israel wanted from this was overthrow of the government, making Iran a subsidiary, getting rid of Iranian weapons like they got rid of Syrian weapons, turning Iran into a subsidiary state, like another de facto or de jure Abraham Accord state that accepted Zionism, accepted Israel, accepted the hegemony and the absolute right of Israel to do anything it wants militarily in the Middle East. And that's what Israel wants. That's what this has always been about. Okay. And American politicians want it to be about something else because Americans aren't going to go, they don't want, it doesn't go down so well, especially now. People are fed up with Zionism. They know there's something wrong with it, and they're not going to fight for Zionism. But that's what this war, the whole business of JCPOA is always what it was about. Joe Biden could have gone back into the JCPOA. Just go back the way it was. No changes. But he never wanted to do that because he wanted to make it, to extend it to ballistic missiles and support for quote-unquote Iranian proxies. That is, he wanted Iran to accept being a weak version of a weak state within a region that was completely dominated by Israel. And can Iran accept that? No. Iran's not going to accept that. I think that's clear. Even on a national interest basis, Iran is not going to accept that. But can Israel accept not getting that? That's the question. I mean, we really have to understand Israel is the player here that's going to make the difference. Can Israel even if Iran, it's like talking about two-state solution. Even if everybody wants the two-state solution, Israel's going to stop the two-state solution. It's like, even if Iran wants to abandon Lebanon and abandon Gaza, just wants to be a normal state with its own military, be able to have a substantial military of its own, to be able to protect itself against an Israeli attack or any attack, and it wants to develop its economy without sanctions, it'll be the most economically powerful country in the region. It will be. And will Israel accept that? No, I don't think they will. And that's the problem that Iran has. It's the problem that Donald Trump has, and the Americans have, and everybody has. We got to sit back and forget. And if you're at some point, Israel has to be defeated, and know it's defeated, and everybody knows it's defeated, and know it cannot come back to this war again. And I don't know, because Israel's not going to allow that to happen without using every weapon at its disposal, including nuclear weapons. And that's my thinking anyway. So we're far from an end to this game. We're at the beginning of the middle of the end.
I totally agree with you. I think this ceasefire is not going to remain. Guys, if you listen to this video, make sure you like this video. Let's try and get as many people in here as possible. Like this video. So Jim, JD Vance today was on a major podcast tour run. He went from one place to another, trying to sell the deal to essentially MAGA. What's your thoughts about that? I mean, is it desperation? Like, what's going on there?
I don't know. MAGA is split up now many different ways. Again, he has got to say it's hard for him to say with a straight face that they haven't failed in everything they said they were going to do, which was to overthrow the government of Iran, unconditional surrender. We're going to take the nuclear dust, and we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Now he's got to admit, oh yeah, Iran's going to get $300 billion, but it'll be the Saudis, it'll be the Gulf states that'll pay, and that's what they will do. They'll set up a Gulf fund. But Iran, again, let's see. Iran is supposed to get $12 billion of their sequestered funds, right? Right at the outset. Friday, they should get that $12 billion. At least, I think it's $12 billion, half or something of the funds that were their funds that were taken from them, which Trump and MAGA for 10 years have been saying, oh, look, they're giving our money to Iran, which they weren't giving our money to Iran. They're giving Iran's money to Iran, So J.D. Vance is being sent out to get chewed up. And the MAGA political elite, insofar as they're one, doesn't really want to attack Trump directly. So they're putting J.D. Vance out there as the whipping boy, really. He's going to get the crap from who says, look, you're surrendering to Iran. And he's going to have to try and pretend he isn't. And it's not going to come off very well. But they're not saying, Trump is surrendering to Iran. They don't want to say that. And Trump, Vance is the whipping boy who's willing to go out there and say, okay, come at me and I'll try and bloviate and do some bullshit and tell you that this is not really a surrender. We're not really giving Iran anything they want. And they're going to have to give us so much more. Wait, you see. That's what he was saying. Everybody's saying and of course, it's true. The Iranians are going to amplify what's good for them, and they're going to minimize what costs they're going to have to pay. But what are the costs they're going to have to pay? I mean, right now, what are they? They're going to open the Straits of Hormuz, when they'll end up charging fees. I mean, so Iran, it's an impossible task that they've given J.D. Vance. And the MAGA movement is disintegrating. It's breaking up. There's a die-hard, and it's going to become what precisely the MAGA movement was breaking up about. It's going to become a hardcore Zionist movement. It's the attack is from the hardcore Zionists, and who are saying you're surrendering Iran, and they're going to be joined not by the Democrats. The Democrats are going to say that, and So MAGA is already kind of incomprehensible and it's full of self-contradiction, and that's just going to get worse. But people like, the Ben Shapiro's and the Mark Levin's and all these people are going to try and pretend that their problem is they have to somehow be against this deal and characterizing it as a surrender without becoming anti-Trump and characterizing Trump as the villain of this. And that's impossible to do. We're seeing, everybody sees every day how incoherent Trump is and how little he understands and how contradictory he is. And that's just becoming, so you have a hardcore of Trump loyalists, that cult of personality of Trump. That's not going to go away. But you have this other group, which were especially the Zionists who were attached to Trump because he was doing what they wanted and everything they wanted, the Adelson and co. Zionist crew, and they're now getting angry at Trump. So I don't know. That's a part of MAGA that's going to go away, and we're going to split up, and MAGA is just going to be MAGA is shattering itself to pieces.
No doubt. We're going to have to wait and see what happens, because I think that what Trump did was, by alienating his base and alienating the original the original people who were pro-Trump, and essentially moving towards the Zionists, he lost a large amount of his support. But I guess the question to you is now, just moving on, Russia in Ukraine. I am seeing a large number of Russian attacks on Ukraine. The attacks on Kiev are increasing. If you can give us an update on the latest what's happening in Russia and Ukraine, that'd be awesome.
Well, no, I can't, because I haven't seen it in a couple of days. I haven't seen I haven't seen the state of the operations on the ground in a couple of days, or the state of the drone attacks in a couple of days. So, I know that Putin had a friendly telephone call with Donald Trump. I know there was a lot of dissatisfaction about that in Russia. But, again, Putin is making a perfectly smart, I think, calculation that, why, if Trump wants to be nice to me, I'll be nice to him personally. He's not doing anything for Ukraine. He's not. I think Trump is. I think the United States military apparatus is helping Ukraine. They still are, and I don't necessarily think they'll ever give up that. But really, the main tactical day-to-day support, the real material support, is being done by the Europeans now, and by the British and the French and Germans, and the Baltic states. And I think that's going to create a problem. I think, look, the British and the French have seized Russian so-called shadow tankers, Russian ships supposedly carrying Russian oil or Russian goods. They are provoking the bear, and they're going to find out. They're fucking around, and they're going to find out eventually. Russia is going to react to that. That, I think, what's happening in Ukraine, Russia will take care of. I haven't seen if you're saying Russia had some very big strikes on Kiev, I hadn't seen that in the last couple of days. I've been traveling. So Russia's gonna.
Fair enough.
Were there any Oreshnik strikes?
No Oreshniks. It was mainly drones and missiles that were striking Kiev over time. And the other question I got for you is, today Zelensky came out with a couple of statements. The first one he said is that he just doesn't understand or fathom the reason as to why Putin is not agreeing to a deal. There's 35,000 Russians dying on a monthly basis. And the second statement he made was to say that any negotiations must occur in a third country, and he's not willing to travel to Moscow. What's your thoughts on this?
Well, look, he knows. I hope he knows, or maybe he doesn't, that how he's portraying the military situation is wrong. Russia is not losing 35,000 troops a month. It's more likely that Ukraine. I think Putin said that Ukraine was losing 30,000 troops a month. Russia is replacing its losses, and more than that, and Ukraine really can't replace its losses. So, Zelensky is you know, he's trying to portray that Russia is losing, that Ukraine is taking the initiative. I know that the Russians have succeeded in the Donbas area in almost, I think, completely taking Konstantinov, and they're probably halfway taking Liman. And these are, and in the north, the Russians are in the Kharkiv and Sumy areas. They have been, I didn't see the last couple of days, but they were, relentlessly advancing. And I think that, Zelensky is going to be scared about this, and he's going to portray it. Now, the American and the Western press will portray it as, because of this counteroffensive they supposedly had in Western Zaporozhye, the Ukrainians supposedly had. But, they know the Ukrainian military, and they've said it. Budanov himself has said it, after a few months, it's going to be clear that they can't win. It's going to be clear to everybody that they can't win. And Zelensky still wants to get some kind of ceasefire. He still wants to portray himself as someone who's in that he doesn't understand why the Russians don't want to do this. They don't want to do it because they're winning, and they don't need to do it. And Putin has said you can come to Russia anytime you want. Putin doesn't really meet with him. Doesn't really want to meet with him. He doesn't really want to meet with Putin. Nothing's going to come of a meeting between Putin and Zelensky, because this is going to be settled on the ground. This is going to be fought to a conclusion. And when the military forces of Ukraine start really to unravel, that's going to be when the end of it's going to come. When you see large desertions and large-scale surrenders, that will be, that's what wins a war. When the military forces are defeated, and that's coming for Ukraine inexorably, unless there's some kind of Deus Ex Machina that we don't know about. But we're not seeing anything else but that. So, Ukraine, because of the help that they're getting from the Baltic states, from England and France and Germany, and Romania probably, they are able to strike at certain facilities, oil installations in Russia. They're able to hit some targets, but that's not going to change the course of the war. What's changed the course of the war is the advances that the Russian army is making in the Donbas and Zaporozhye and in the Kharkiv and Sumy regions, and those advances are not stopping. And Russia has the manpower to do it, and they have the weaponry to do it, and the materiel to do it, and Ukraine is lacking in all of those things. I mean, Zelensky's trying to get some more air defense systems, and there aren't any out there. So that's the problem. It's been off the front pages because of the Iran stuff, but it is as consequential a battle as is going on in the world. It has been for the past 4 years, and it's made a big difference in the world. It's amazing to me that Trump has withdrawn from it as much as he can, although I still say that behind the scenes, the Americans are in it. And not confident they're just going to walk away from it. But they will if they need to in order to save Israel.
So, you mentioned this tanker that was apprehended by the British Navy, the UK Navy, Royal Navy. Do you think there's going to be any response by Russia, or do you think Russia just accepts that these things happen whenever they happen?
Yeah, again, at some point, look, these are not Russian flag tankers, okay? So Russia can say, they can say this is piracy, this is against law, against international law, these are international waters. I don't think, for one specific instance, for sure, Russia is going to react militarily against it. But there are going to be more and more of these, the more they get away with. And not just, it's the tankers combined with, the Baltic states saying, oh, well, there are all these drones flying over us. We can't figure out which one is which, and they're hitting Petrograd. And so at some point, and I know that there are, Scott Ritter has said that Russia has already made a decision to strike Europe. And I know that there are voices in Russia, in the highest levels of the Russian political apparatus and military apparatus, that want Russia to do something to punch the Europeans in the face and tell them, back off. This is you've gotten involved in this war, and we now consider you co-belligerents, and you've got to back off. So it's the accumulation of things, though, that are going to happen. The British and the French aren't going to go after a ship that is escorted by the Russian Navy, but the Russian Navy can't escort every ship, and it's not going to escort ships that aren't Russian flagged. And but at some point, if this operation to damage Russian commerce on the shipping lanes becomes too much of an annoyance, Russia will do something about it. That's going to be, a tactical decision that Putin will make at some point. But he's under pressure, I think, to do things about it right now in Russia.
So, and in terms of today, because there was quite a bit, there was more hits by Ukraine on Russian drone facility. Sorry, on Russian oil facilities. Now, many people I speak to, they keep saying, "Look, this doesn't matter," and okay, so definitely Russia is generating a lot more money than they were before due to the war in Iran. That being said, if you look at the production of energy, it has dropped by 8%. Now, I know people can kind of bat that away, but I don't think it's as simple as batting it away, because it does seem to be a concentrated, directed attack on Russian energy. What's your thoughts on this?
Yes, no, I agree with you that I don't want to poo-poo it. You can't poo-poo it. I don't think it will change the course of the war, but it's imposing a cost. And Russia is going to have to decide what it's going to do to stop that. That's the point. It can't just let that progress and become more, from 2 strikes a day to 4 strikes a day to 10 strikes a day on oil facilities. You have to be able to put a stop to it. And that's where I think the argument in Russia is going to be. This is coming. These drones are not Ukrainian drones. They're drones that are produced in Germany or in Poland, and all the parts are shipped to, except the label to Ukraine, where they stick a label on it, and then it's a Ukrainian drone, and then they take it on a boat and bring it up to Latvia and send it over to Petrograd. So where are they in Crimea? Where are those drones coming from? Are they coming off Ukrainian ships? Are they coming off Ukrainian facilities down by Odessa? So it's Russians know, and they're getting pissed off about it. And I don't know when and what he's going to do about it. But at some point, I do think, I agree with you that it's not nothing, And I think what he's doing, or he being Putin at this point, is saying, well, we're going to just keep advancing on the ground in Ukraine, and I'll put off for a moment what I'm going to do about that. But I think he's going to come under more and more pressure to actually do something about it, especially if they continue stopping ships, they continue hitting oil production facilities. Because as you say, this is a very focused campaign. It's focused on oil production facilities, and that's not nothing. You can't just, and we don't quite know. Let's also be clear about this. The further away those facilities are, the less explosive weight is on the drone. You know what I mean? So we don't quite know the extent of the damage of an oil production facility. You hit an oil production facility, there's going to be a big fire for a day. But has 10% of the facility gone out of production, or has 60% of the facility gone out of production? Those are 2 different things. So we don't really know. I think Ukraine is using it. These are dramatic hits, and they create dramatic pictures, and they create real costs. So, but again, this is a tactical battlefield decision in the context of a war that's been going on now since 22, and the Russian Putin and the general staff have to decide what they're going to do about it. But there is a lot of pressure, I think, for Russia to exert some kind of military, what they call military technical action against the Europeans who are behind this.
And what do you see happening in this war specifically in the next week or so? Do you think there's going to be some kind of escalation, or do you think it's going to be more of the same?
I think not. I don't foresee a dramatic escalation. I see them advancing in the. They take all of Konstantinov and they take Liman, and they'll start really fighting for Slavyansk and Kramatorsk, and if they take Orekov if that fully falls in the Zaporozhye region, then they'll start on the suburbs of Zaporozhye city. And look at what they're doing in the north. They are advancing in the north, in the Kharkiv area and the Sumy area. If they open they were opening last week a new line of attack through a new border region in the north. If they approach Sumy, Zelensky is more afraid of that, I think, of anything else, that the Russians would take Sumy, because that's the road to Kiev. So I just see them advancing and taking cities. Again, what the dramatic break we will see will be when there are large concentrations of Ukrainian forces that surrender or desert. And we haven't quite seen that yet. That's, now, if they start with Oreshnik attacks on Kiev, that's possible. And that could be, and I would almost expect it to be a response to these attacks, these drone attacks on oil installations. The Russians will start attacking command centers in Kiev with serious Oreshnik attacks that will devastate. So those are the kinds of things we'll see. Now, whether they will force Ukraine into some kind of more submissive posture, the Europeans are not going to let them do that. They don't want them to do that. I mean, if the Russians were to hit Kiev in strong enough way that they'd force the foreign delegations to leave Kiev, that would be a big thing. And they've said they said that about the Victory Day parade. If they attack the Victory Day parade, the foreign delegations Kiev better get out of Kiev. So, but that didn't happen. So, if the Russians say that again, it's time for the foreign delegations to leave Kiev. We're going to hit them really hard, and the foreign delegations do decide we can't stay here anymore. That would be a dramatic thing, but it's not the end of the war. This is going to be hard to end because Russia now, again, the wild card in this is the Ukrainian fascists. They don't want to give up the war. They want to destroy Russia. They're not going to give up. I said this again, I wrote about this. The Americans think they're going to compose, and Americans and Zelensky thinks they're going to get some kind of deal with the Russians that will allow them to keep this or that. It's not the Russians they have to worry about not wanting that deal. It's the Ukrainian fascists that they aren't going to want that deal. They're not going to accept that deal. Russia is at the point where they're realizing they're going to have to overthrow the government of Ukraine. And they have to have a regime change in Ukraine. And they can't, that's a very hard thing to do. And it will come, I think, by virtue of the defeat of Ukraine. And as I say, by virtue of the defeat of the Ukrainian army. And then some kind of political faction has to arise in Ukraine that will put down the fascists in Ukraine. That has to happen.
Yeah, let's see what happens. Jim, thank you so much for taking your time out to join us. Really appreciate it. Always appreciate your insight. I know the audience do. People can find you on your Substack, The Polemicist, as well as your X page, which I believe is the same name, right?
No, it's at The Polemicist _
Okay, cool.
On X.
So people can find you on that as well. But thank you so much for taking your time out to join us. Really appreciate it.
All right. Good luck. Take it easy.
Appreciate it. That was Jim. Make sure you're following him on his Substack, which is The Polemicist on Substack, and also his X page as well. Guys, if you can like this video and share it, and subscribe to the channel. Next, we've got Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Aguilar. That is pinned. So come across to the pinned post, and we're going to have Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Aguilar on the hour. But on this one, appreciate you guys joining in. Appreciate you guys listening. And for sure, we'll see you on the